So in this video, I wanted to showcase a little bit of work that I've been doing, which was this morning I started, but I also would like to note that all the work that you see here is not entirely mine. I did not make the building or the structure. However, I did make the effect for the wobble. So that's my disclaimer for this video. However, I will admit to making the wobble effect, so now the building wobbles in this little video. A bunch of other things I've made in this scene, but I'm not looking at other things other than this wobble. So what I'd like to talk about right now is this wobbling effect. So in our game that we're making at AIE Adelaide, we're expected to make a game based around monsters, destroying cities and buildings, and fighting other people. I'm not going to go into depth about what we do in our game, other than it's based off of probably monster-based movies and monster themes. So right now I'm showing you a building wobble effect that I had made myself for this. And I had a little bit of help from the teachers. However, a part of this I already had the scripting for. I just used the teachers' bit of code to make it act like sign. So I made the movement script, but I had no way to move it to a certain position. So the teacher helped me to make it go to a certain position based on sign. But I have some awesome features about this that I can change. So if I want this to be gentler in a certain direction, I can make it more gentle. So then it's not so strong about how it moves. If I wanted to go even softer again, I could still go softer. You can just see it moving because of the sensitivity I've given it, which is pretty nice for an effect. So if I was to make this a lot more rougher, this is the kind of effects we get. Now I can change the direction in which this is trying to strike and in which ways it's moving to and from. And we can also make this go up and down, which is pretty cool. So if I zoom out a ton, it's just looking really wobbly. And it's a really cool effect, even though it's not what we want exactly. It's it's really something interesting to see, and have the building just go cuckoo like this. This is really, really cool. And it's been really fun to do this stuff. So getting the help that I got to make this functionality work was really excellent. So honestly, my role in our project's development has not been to make scripts. It's been mostly to make some of these effects that we see here. But I've had some assistance since I'm not an artist myself to make these effects, as I don't really have much work left to do. But I don't want to go and look at the effects. That's going to be up to the team when we finish our game. And our game is for schoolwork only, so some of the stuff is copyright protected, but it's allowed to be used under fair use for school purposes, education purposes, since the school has a license for this. And also because we're getting qualifications out of this as well, and we can't afford to go and say, hey, let's make a game and pay for this stuff. And also, we're not making money off this. This is just an awesome project that we're working on. So this wobbling effect is, like I said, for when you hit buildings. And it's been really, really fun to work with, make, and yeah, it's been quite interesting. So the way this basically is going to be working is it's going to get an input direction. So wherever it's been hit from to the point it has its axis, as you can see there's the axes here, it'll get this axis here, and it'll get the attacking monster or impact strikes hit direction, and it will move it according to said direction. So as you can see, it sort of changes the motion in which direction it is, depending on how I do this. So it's a really, really cool effect to have. Now, if I really, really want to, I can adjust this just right, I reckon, to get it to go in a different angle. This looks kind of natural for a building wobble, but this is for our game. Honestly, I don't really know really what I can talk about because I'm limited to what I could really say about this other than the fact that it's a building wobble and it's really cool. And so far this has been so fun to work with. It has been extraordinary what we've been able to do. So I am a bit tired, but at the same time I'm proud of this. So this is how the building wobble effect works. When it is in working order, there is a hit duration. The hit duration, if I could pull this into another inspector, that would be cool. In this script, it's an on impact wobble. We have a mesh modifier loop. This, when active, makes the mesh modify itself. What we do is we get the vectors of the original coordinates and we keep them private because we don't want to modify them. We also have the vertices of the mesh itself that we want to modify. And when we want to bring them back to the original coordinates, we have the original coordinates that we can utilize to say, hey, return to this position. So the scale is what we give out to uh, how much wobbling we're going to get out of it. Now this one has to be public, but the scale set is the default one that we want to set on start for this, and we have a balance for this one particular building. However, this will probably end up going public in the sense that if we do not set it to public, it won't be good. I'm sorry, I am a bit tired. I have had a headache of a day. I'm just enjoying what I can. So the scale set is basically how many signs we have through it, how many waves are going to go through this one mesh from A to B, basically. So whatever the distance is, we modify and we increase how many waves there are, or change sensitivity to make it feel a bit more natural, depending on how big the thing is we're doing. Uh, there's not really much I can show for modification, other than maybe, just maybe, I could maybe put a object with a high level of verts in here. So if I grab a cylinder, how many verts do you have? If we go into the wireframe mode, basically this has not many verts to play with, really. Realistically, it doesn't. What does have, however, a lot of verts is maybe a ragdoll? That might... No? Okay. Forget about the ragdoll. I'm just trying to find something with a lot of verts. Sphere. Oh yeah, a sphere would have many, many verts. There's something we can definitely use. So, I'll make a new sphere. And it'll be sphere. Then what we're going to do is we're going to attach the wobble script on impact wobble. We're going to change this back to the shaded so we can see this. This is going to look really weird, but really cool at the same time, I reckon. If we can get this to work. It's not really doing what it's supposed to do, but it's okay. I'll change the duration, and then I'll get an idea of how to modify this. Look at that. You can see that sign going through, which is really cool. And that's, I think, frequency. Pretty much. I'm going to just scale this up. Because this is a ball, and this is what we've done to the ball. We've really distorted this ball. Then if we change the angular directions and stuff, we can change how it modifies the ball. And the distances for how hard it's been hit in certain directions. And it will also translate the transform's direction. So that's pretty cool stuff we can do. that's pretty much all this really does. And if we change the sensitivity of how many waves there are, it will just shrink. And here we can see that's basically sine. This is basically an AC sort of AC/DC sort of wave that we can use to wobble the building. But changing its sensitivity will give us a little bit sensitivity. So I'm going to change it to 1. Change that to 1. Then I'm going to change everything to 15 because I can. And that's a ball, and it's getting really heavily distorted, and it looks really cool. And you can't deny that looks really sick, the way it's transforming that. I have no way to actually increase the speed unless I use the frequency thing. I believe this axis that I'm working with right now is just the frequency. If I set this to 0.1, it will go really, really slow. If I change this one, it will just change how bendy it is. So I want gentle or I want hard, I can do that. So that is really a cool effect that I've got, and I can't really show it to you what it looks like in the inspector, but it's not very many features. It's got a mesh modifier loop boolean, it's got a vertice count, it's got the scale in which is x and y, which is actually not really true. It's basically how many waves and how frequent it's going to happen. It's happening at a rate of 0.1. If I set to 1, this is happening according to time, so it's happening every 1 second. Then we have the restore variable, which doesn't do anything, that has to be removed. Then we have the hit direction, which will transform how it's going to move in which directions and whatnot. So wherever you hit it from is how it's going to, in the direction it's going to basically wobble to and from. Then we have the max move distance, that's a private variable, we don't need to set, and the hit duration is a public variable to change how long it's going to happen for. So if I change this to a 1, we'll see it return to a normal state after a certain period of time, depending on if it's happy. So this is how it basically works. If I change this to 3 seconds, it'll return on its own to those original coordinates according to the distance. And that looks really, really cool the way it does that. And then if we hit it again, there's the direction in which we've hit it, 1, 1. And that bit there's over traveled, and then it just locks in place. And it's only, how many lines long is this currently? It sits at 143 roughly lines. There's a lot of green in here that doesn't need to be there, but it's really cool. I'm proud of this, and I've had enough. I'm gonna go to bed because I've been out here too long. Oh. And also, I've got to be a bit more productive this week with the regulator. And this is just something that I wanted to share with people to show that I've been working on 2 projects at once rather than just one. So this is sort of my proof, since you're not going to see this in the regulator because it's not about the regulator. However, I could open up the regulator project. I haven't done anything in it though since I've done some work to it. So unfortunately, oh no, now I have, oh no, now I have, I should have waited. Never mind. I'll just edit the video quickly. But basically, no. Basically, I haven't really done any work to this project since you last saw it, other than adding clouds, which is really cool, and having that feature to turn up and on and off the layers, depending on what the states are. So, yeah. And there's a bit of rain. I can move really quickly, and then you see it sort of disappear, which is bad. But work. I have a lot of work to do other than that, and this game is going to take a bit of effort. So from what I've learnt, I'm going to be 100% honest, from what I've learnt, I'm not going to use Blender and I'm not going to use Maya to make any 3D models. In fact, I'm actually going to be honest about how stupid I'm going to be. It's the stupidest thing I could possibly do. But in Unity, I'm going to make a tool which allows me to make my own 3D models. So basically, I'm going to make a mesh in edit mode, and then that mesh is going to be an object I can use in this scene. I'm going to try and do it so that I can have it restricted to a certain space and certain size, so that I can keep it interlocking with the rest of the scene's stuff. Then I'm going to see if I can set it so it's like, right, here's a keyframe that I'm going to save as a prefab, and it sets it as a prefab, and then I can have a file that I can use to then say, here's all my directions, in which directions it works. And then I can be like, this is direction 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. So I got a lot of work up my sleeves. It's really tiring. I reckon that this is all going to take a very long time to do, because I'm going to for my vision of this game now, it's gone from 2D to 3D because the art style that we see currently before our eyes is definitely not viable uh, play-wise and to enjoy. So this is all gonna go 3D, and I'm gonna give you a bit of the demonstration on what I'm gonna use for 3D stuff. If I'm in here, I'm gonna add, like, I shouldn't really be doing this, but I'm gonna add a terrain. This is gonna be the first step towards saying this is what is going to happen. I don't know these tools off by heart anymore. I've forgotten a lot of things. And in the terrain settings, I'm going to go find the terrain sizes. Now, the terrain size is currently about 1500, but we're going to set to 3000 by 3000. The terrain height, I don't really care currently, and that should, in theory, make it the right size. And if not, I'm not sure why it's not showing. Oh, because it's on the wrong angle. Right. So if I was to figure out the translation coordinates, I'm gonna copy, not really sure what these positions are. I gotta go to the canvas game. If I get this Rex transform, lock this one. 750, 750. Grab that terrain. In this one, I'll say 750, 750. It's about where we want it, but that's not where we want it. Okay. So this is going to be minus 750. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're then going to see if we can rotate this. I really don't believe we can rotate terrains, meaning this isn't going to work. So 90. No, we can't rotate terrains. So I'm going to have to look into rotating terrains, but I plan on using terrains to power this project if I can, and set them on angles, and potentially may have to change it from a 2D side view, which is basically how I've been making the game in 2D, because it's the only way to cast 2D, to putting it into a 3D perspective, which is like this. This is all very, very tough stuff to do, since it means I'm going to have to rewrite my controllers all over again just about, which is going to be not my third time I've done it, because I've done it the third time. This is going to be the fourth time I write this stuff again. This is the more viable option, because I found a lot of issues which are going to take a lot of time to overcome with this project as it is. So I hope this has all been a little bit interesting for some of you guys. But this terrain is what I'm going to be working with, and I'm going to end up having height in the terrain, which is going to allow us to put in some detail, which is going to be cool. So I'm going to change the opacity and just see if I can get some terrain going. I don't even know if this is working. Yeah, it's working. It's just the skylight stuff. So there we go. That's how the terrain starts to look, and I'm going to be using that on the top layer, and then I'm going to see about turning off the renderer component for the terrain, if there's a renderer. The collider. Okay, what if we turn off the terrain itself? Yeah, we can turn off the terrain itself. We could turn off the collider as well, meaning we can disable this stuff without disabling other stuff, because if we disable this, any scripts on this will not work if there's any scripts on it at all. So there's a bunch of things that are going to be a problem, but I feel like this is going to be the way the game is going to have to go if we're going to make it a really viable game to play, and also to be interact with. Because the light, like we have the clouds now, but if we use the light on these objects over here, like we don't have to replace everything. We can still keep the retainer scripts that we have. We'll have to replace the script that makes this thing work. And we're going to have to make it a bit more efficient. But if we put this back into the 2D perspective, while this does seriously look a bit cool, it's not viable to give this to players and say, hey, this is the game. Like, this was the original vision, but the original vision's changed because of restrictions and limitations to hardware technology that's going to make it harder to do this in 2D. Also, there's a lot more optimization I can do for a 3D game at this point in time. I'd like to stick to a 2D game, but I've been trained a lot more with 3D that I can do a lot more with 3D than I can with 2D. The only limitations to any of this stuff that I'm doing is the art assets. There is so much I can do. I'm going to make my own tool so that I can legitimately make something and be able to say, I made this pipe, it's mine, and on top of that, I can potentially export stuff. I'm not really sure what I can do. All I know is I'm going to try and make some tools and stuff to make stuff happen. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I'm sorry for being a pain, but the good thing is that when I make these tools, they're going to make my life a little bit easier since I'll be able to program how I want. Only issue with doing this is I'm going to have to learn a lot to make this work. Sure, it's not viable to me in the short term, but in the long run, it could become very viable. And not to mention, there's going to be tools which are going to be available in the Unity store possibly for people to purchase and use to make their own items in the game, rather than having to go get Blender or go get Maya and licenses and stuff. So that will be useful, since like one-time purchase, that's it. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See you later.